Welcome to the channel, or welcome back, depending on whether you visited me here before. I like to make project videos, particularly instructional videos that help people learn various things. I do it for CNC, lasers, 3D printing, whatever it is that tickles my fancy. I provide the information that I am learning to others so they can learn for themselves. In this series of videos, what I'm going to do is talk about a Potpourri Bowl that I developed using Vectric Aspire software. So you'll have to have Vectric Aspire because it's going to be from the scratch. Right from where I go from a thought in my head to where I create the bowl. And that will be covered in depth during the software tutorial. I'll go through every step I went through, and then I'll have a separate video where I go over how I actually applied the Toolpaths and the software insights into the physical carving of the product right here on this CNC, this Laguna IQ. Let's talk a little bit about how this project got started. I belong to the San Diego Fine Woodworkers Association. Some of you know that if you follow me on a regular basis. And I do volunteer work every year. They have a sale where they earn money for their association, for our association to operate a shop. And during the year, many of us volunteer our time to go ahead and build things and then sell them at this annual sale. One of the things that I got asked to do was, a friend of mine who's heading up the projects asked if I could build some kind of bowl or something to fit this screen. It's a Potpourri screen. And so I said sure, and I developed one bowl, and it was okay. I'm not going to do a video on it. I wasn't particularly impressed myself, but it was nice. And then I started thinking about what other creative things could I do to design a bowl. And I have been working with some material from a company called CIC Workshop, or Cutting It Close Workshop. Some of you may know Ryan Drapella and the stuff that he does. He's got a very good YouTube channel. And he's been teaching and doing a lot of stuff with his channel. And I bought some material called Bamex. I made a couple trays and other things with it. And I thought, you know, I wonder how this would look as a bowl in a glue-up. So that's exactly what I did. I took his material, which is Bamex, which is it's like a walnut material, and then some bamboo material, walnut, and I took a couple pieces of his Bamex that was scrap from some of the other projects that I was doing, and I laminated those along with a piece of maple in between to end up with a little over 2.5 inches thick of material, and said, let's design the bowl around that. And that's what this project is. It's using this laminated Bamex, and I put a couple extra pieces on the end here just to make it thicker, because if you look at the final carve, you'll notice that it goes right to the edge there. So I wanted it to be able to be held together. And so that's exactly what I did. I want to mention that in this specific software tutorial, I'll be very specific and very detailed, so it'll be a little on the longer side. But you should be able to create your own design and your own bowl using Aspire software when you get done watching this video. If you want to follow along and you want to be able to have a starting point for your own project, I will go ahead and put this Aspire file up on my website, and for a modest fee, you'll be able to download that file, and you can use that as a base for this bowl or other bowls that you want to use, or to follow along in the video. In the software, I'm going to cover a couple key things that I want you to get out of it. One is why it's important to center your projects, especially if you want symmetry on the top and the bottom. So you'll see me putting everything in the center of my project, and that holds it all together. Normally, when I work on projects that are not my own, that are already developed, or even if they are my own, being right in the center isn't as critical, but it is for a two-sided project. And so in this case, I will XY from the center, where many times I XY from the bottom left corner. So you'll see me do that and centering the project. The other thing is that if you are going to create a two-sided bowl, you're going to need to be able to understand how to create what I'll call a limit plane. I'll go into that in more detail in the video, but you need that to be able to cut through the project and end up with it being cut completely clear. Then, if you're going to cut completely clear through the project on the top and the bottom, you will need 3D tabs. So I'll go through how to put in the 3D tabs, how to adjust them, and then how to create all of the various toolpaths. We will also in this project be using a combination of regular toolpaths with 3D toolpaths, and so you need to know how to create a toolpath and project it onto the model, and that will also be covered inside this video. So with that, let's go ahead and get started in watching the software portion of the video. Let's walk through the software part of this process, and then we'll go right into cutting the bowl. I'll try not to drag this out too long, but we are going to have a double-sided job, so I'm going to click double-sided right here. It's going to be 6.75 inches wide by 7.0 inches long, 2.5 inches thick, 2.55 inches thick. I'm going to zero off the machine bed. I'm going to center it in the center of the bed. I am going to flip it from right to left sideways. I'm going to make sure it's in cherry for now. That really doesn't matter since I'm using Bamex for this bowl. So the first thing we need to do is create the bowl. So the way to do that is I'm going to create a circle to begin with, and I'm going to put it right here in the center, and I'm going to use a diameter of 4.75 inches. Hit close. So now it's closed. I need to create the bowl part of this project, and I am using a Mac computer, so it operates a little bit slower than the Windows computers. The first thing I'm going to do is have the vector circle. I'm going to use the create round shape component, and I want the bowl to go pretty deep pretty fast. So the profile, the angle for the profile, I'm going to put at 90 degrees. Look at the 3D view here. And now that I have that, the next thing I got to pay attention to is the fact that my material is only 2.55 inches thick. And you can see that with the way that defaulted, that makes this 2.375 inches right here. You can see that. So what I want to do is I want to bring in a calculator. So we know that we have a 2.55 inch thick piece of wood. So if I know that I have 2.55 inches, 2.55 times 0.5, that tells me I have 1.275 inches to put on each side. So if I take 1.275 inches and I divide that by 2.375, that allows me to put in a number quickly. It comes up to 53.6. So if I come in here and I put a number of 53.2, let's say, and I hit calculate on the limit plane, you can see what that did was it flattened out the bowl and limited the total height to 1.2365. So total height is 1.2365, and that is less than the 1.275. So you know that will fit on the upper half if we split this bowl in half, which is what we're going to want to do. So that looks good to me, and I'm going to hit top bowl. Now I could have come over here and I could have used this little icon here and moved it up or down to get the 53.2, but you'll notice how choppy this is on my machine. It may be better on yours, so that's 54.2, and since I knew I could do the math, I just went ahead and used the 53.2 and left it at that. So you can adjust all of these adjustments with these various icons over here. So this one adjusts the limit, and the limit is what's going to flatten it out. This one here adjusts the profile, which would change that from 90 to something else, which is the angle for this bowl as it's starting in. And then we have this one over here, which adjusts the base. So if I wanted to play with the base height, which is this one right here, I could play with that, and I could go make it bigger on the bottom, which would make it fatter. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to put the base height back down to 0. This one here adjusts the scale, and you can tell the scale over here. This button is the total. This button is the base height. This button is the profile, and this button is the limit. So now I'm going to hit close, And on our component layer, if you go over here on the top, you can see that we have one component, which is the top of the bowl. So since I want to make this bowl symmetrical and match up, and I could go into this view, which would allow me to have both, the easiest way is to take this bowl and copy it to the other side. And since we made this bowl perfectly circled, that will match up. And I'm going to take the vector that we made it with and copy that to the other side also. So now, if we go back to the 3D view and we look at it, you can see that we have a bowl that is on the same on both sides. And then we'll decide as we adjust it if that's what we want. Let's go back to the 2D view for a second. And I wanted to make that a split view for a second. I'm going to go up to the top. The easiest way is to just hit the cube here right on the top and it'll straighten it out. And I need to make some vectors. Well, why don't I increase this screen back up now that I don't need that calculator anymore? I would need to make, remember this is the top. You can tell because it has the white or the gray, and my bottom has an orange or yellow color depending on how you look at it. So the next thing I need to do is make a location for that screen that I'm going to put in the top of the bowl. And so that I know through doing some testing up front is 3.05 inches in diameter. So I'm going to take this circle. I'm going to go to the center right when I hit the center here. I'm going to hit 3.05, hit apply, and now that's the size of the screen. So what that tells me is if I'm looking at it on the, let me turn the vectors on over here, that is going to go slightly down into the rounded area of the bowl. So that's the screen. Then inside the screen, we have a little bit of a lip that the screen needs to sit on. So the next step then is to take this and offset that amount. And that amount is about 0.12 or so. So I'm going to bring this in and offset it inwards, 0.12, 0.12. I don't need any sharp quarters. I don't want to delete the original. Hit offset. And this here is going to be my lip when I get all said and done. I also know that I like to use a roughing toolpath. Inside of here will be the bowl. And so I like to offset that roughing toolpath by about 0.05. And you'll see what I'm talking about here as we go through this. So I'm going to offset it again. And this time I'm going to go 0.05 because I'm thinking through my toolpaths as I'm laying this out. So right now the toolpaths I have is I have to create a lip for the screen. That's this first pass. I have to create a bowl to set the potpourri in. And this lip helps set that bowl dimension. And then to make my tooling more efficient, I need to cut with a rough cut. Actually, I don't need to cut with those. That's what I like to do. So the other thing I want to do, since I use the offset tool, is I want to do a real quick check on nodes. And so I like to change the Bezier curves, make this 0.004. And I don't need sharp corners. And I'm going to replace selected vectors, and I'm going to preview it. That looks good to me. I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do the same thing. Bezier curves, 0.0 preview, hit OK. And I'm going to hit preview, hit OK. And we're ready to start going over to the bottom after I set up specific toolpaths. There is one more vector I want to set up. So I'm going to come over here to this outside vector we started with, and I'm going to offset it 0.25 in the outward direction. And I'm going to go to outwards, offset, and this is going to be my vector that I use for carving the bowl. So let's go through and put these on layers so they're not forgotten. So this first one here is my bowl lip or my screen. So I'm going to move to layer, new layer, screen lip. And let me just make that, let's say blue. Okay. So the next one I have here is going to be move to layer, new layer, Potpourri Bowl. That's where the bowl is going to be. And I'm going to just go ahead and make that this color here. And then this one right here, I didn't mean to click on the component. This one right here, I'm going to move to a new one, which is going to be roughing inside bowl. Okay. And I'm going to change that. Let's call that green. hit OK. So now I have 3 different layers, and you'll see when I set up the toolpath how I use those. And then I have this right here, and that's going to move to the layer cutting profile. And I'm going to leave that one black. So now I'm going to hit close, come over here, and I want to go about creating layers on the other side, which is the bottom of the bowl. So I'm going to flip the bowl. And on this side of the bowl, the only real thing I want to do to this bowl is add a little lip in the center so that when it's sitting down, it doesn't have a completely flat bottom where any undulations could cause it to rock around. So it's a good practice to put a little lip down here. So I'm going to go ahead and put a circle right here and get this in the center. And I'm going to just make this about, let's say maybe 2 inches. Hit close. And this I'm going to move to bottom indent. And let's see what color I'm going to make that. I'll go ahead and make that an orange. Hit OK. That looks good. One other thing I need to do is I need to copy this vector out here. And I'm going to copy this to the other side. So now let's go ahead and set up some toolpaths for cutting. So the first toolpath, lock in the toolpath over here. The first toolpath we want to cut would be the roughing pass. Before I do that, the first thing you're going to go when you first come into the roughing pass is this material setup. So we don't need to change anything here. We don't need to change anything here. And we can see that this gap above the model is 0.023, gap below the model 0.0 inches. Why don't we just split the difference here? Put it right there in the middle, let's say. So now we have 0.092 and 0.138. Let's come down one more. There we go. Try to get it right close. So that's pretty good. Our model thickness is 2.527 inches. Our total material is 2.55, which means we're using up all of our material. And our modeling plane is a 1.275. We don't need to do anything with any of these unless we were adjusting for clamps. I don't need to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now we have our material set in the right location. It's time to start building the toolpaths. The first thing that I'm going to do is do the roughing toolpath. So I'm going to come over here, select roughing. I'm going to get selected vectors. I'm going to select this vector right here. Because I'm using selected vector, I do not need a boundary offset. I've basically done that. I like to go with a raster, and I'm going to use 45-degree angle. And I don't need to avoid machined areas. Profile pass only happens over here. I don't need to ramp. Save Z, 2.75 inches. That gets me up above the material. And I could either do manual selection, or if I wanted to, I could come up here and I could do close vector, associate with, and I could use cutting profile. Hit close. And this is my top 3D rough. Forgot to select my bit. I'm going to come up here and select a bit. And for this bit, I'm going to use a roughing toolpath. And I'm going to use my Golden Boy XL, which is from CIC Workshop. It's got a 1.5 inch cutting length. That should be enough. I think everything looks good here. Now, Ryan Drapella is always exclaiming how we baby our bits and how it can do a little more. So I'm going to take a chance on this one. And instead of doing a 0.25, I'm going to go to 0.5 inch pass depth. By waiting until after I selected the bit and using edit, we'll only do it for this one toolpath. So we'll calculate this. Let's take a look. All right, hit close. Now the next toolpath we need to do is the finishing toolpath. So I'm going to use a ball nose for that. Remove this one, select this here, and I'm going to use one that I use quite a bit when I'm doing these kind of carvings. Let me see, 3D carving support, finish toolpath. I've got this 46294 bit. For some reason, it didn't carry all of the stuff with it, so I'll put that in here. Hit copy, hit apply, and that gives me the information I need. So it's basically a 5% step over. Hit select. I'm going to go to the selected vectors. I'm going to do the raster again, 45 degrees. And down here, I'll go ahead and select the same vector I did before, cutting profile, associate, hit close, hit calculate. And so now let's preview that. So that's our first set of toolpaths for the top, just getting the bowl carved. Let's go to the bottom and see what we can do there. So I'm going to flip this thing over, and we're going to do the same thing. We know we're on the bottom, we've got the yellow. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to select the roughing. I'm going to use that same rougher bit. I'm going to use the same selected vectors. I'm going to do the raster, 45 degrees, and I'm going to select the vectors, which is that cutting profile, hit close, hit calculate, and I want to put here bottom 3D rough. Calculate. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the finisher too real quick. So I'm going to do the finishing pass, and I'm going to leave this same bit, same selected vectors, same 45 degrees, select the vector, cutting profile, select, calculate. So now I've got both of them calculated. I'm going to preview the visible toolpath for the bottom 3D rougher. And then I'm going to preview the visible toolpath for the finishing bit. So far the bowls are looking good. Let's blow this thing up for just a bit and take a full look at it. Now, one of the things you should notice is that there is still an onion skin here in the middle. So it's not going to go all the way through, and you have this little lip right here along here. So we need to take care of that. And the best way to take care of that with these, let's flip this over to the top so you see it also. It's going to have the same thing. There's the top. So the best way to take care of this is to make sure that we add a limit plane and go all the way past this cusp. And so this cusp, typically to get rid of that, since we're using a 1/4 inch ball nose, is we need to at least go about 0.125 inches past that lip. And we might not need to do that on both sides, but we definitely need to do that on one side and maybe on both sides. So we're going to go back, and we're going to go back to the top now. And I'm going to split this again so I get a split view again, and I'm going to go over here to the top. So now we're on the top. We've got the components, and what we'll want to do is we'll want to add a zero plane on here, or a limit plane. I'm going to hit close over here. And so we need to add a limit plane. So we go over here to design. We come over here, and you'll see it says create a flat shape, shift click to create zero plane. And so we're going to hit shift, and then we're going to click. You see we have a zero plane here now. Let me select that. You can see how this all turned colors. So now we've got a zero plane, and we know that we need to go to the zero plane, and we need to take it minus 0.125, most likely should do it. Hit close. And then what I want to do is come back over here to these toolpaths, and I'm going to recalculate those toolpaths. I'm going to reset the preview, and I'm going to preview those toolpaths now. Let me flip this over. And I don't need to recalculate those because I haven't added a zero plane yet. Let's just see what it looks like. So now you can see we've gone completely through the bowl. I'm going to go ahead and blow this up and discard this amount. And let's rotate this bowl around. And that's actually looking pretty good. But I'm wondering if we can get it just a little cleaner if we go down with a zero plane on the bottom. So let's go ahead and add a zero plane to the bottom. So once again, come down here, shift, click, and you can see there's our zero plane. Closed out of the preview mode, there's our zero plane, and we're going to do the same thing and go minus 0.125, which is the radius of that bit. Hit close. And now we're going to go ahead and recalculate these two. Okay, let's preview the bottom first, and we're going to reset the preview. preview the bottom. Flip it over, preview the top. And with that, let's flip that off and let's rotate it. So as you can see, when we're rotating this thing, it looks pretty clean. Okay, with that then, go back to the 2D view. And because we have the top and the bottom already worked out, let's go to the next step, which is to make sure that we are covered with the thing not falling out when we carve it. So we need to put in some 3D tabs. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add a new level, insert new level. I like to do that. And I'm going to call this, rename that to tabs. So now that I have the tabs, I've got that level selected. For what I'm going to connect to it, I'm going to come into the clip art. And under clip art, there are 3D tabs. Move it over into place. I'm not sure what happened here. What happened is I think I undid it when I was going to create a new level, insert a new level. I think I accidentally deleted that a second ago off screen. I was doing something. Move this up. Typically the 3D tabs are merged, and to make everything go smoothly, let's rotate this around. You see how this is coming in and up. It looks kind of strange because it's adding to the bowl. We want to take these tabs right here and we want to take that combine mode to merge also. And when we do, did you see what happened there? So that disappeared. So now we have the tab right here. And to make that tab, let's blow this up. To make that tab be the way we want it, we're going to have to adjust that tab. Okay, I think that looks pretty good right there. Let's go to the 2D view and we'll go to split view. Now I'm going to take this one here and I'm going to go ahead and mirror that horizontally about the job center. Create a mirrored copy. Flip horizontal. So now I have that tab there and there. And then if I select them both and I flip vertical, mirrored, flip about, now you see we have 4 tabs set up on the top. And that will allow us to cut this thing out without it falling out. Hit close. And so now what I want to do is I want to take these 4 tabs and I want to copy those over to the other side. And then we will flip this over, go to the components section and do what we did before, which is we're going to insert a new level. That level will be called tabs. And we will move each of these up there. So now we've done just what we did before. Notice this odd little thing on the side. The one thing we haven't done is taken up here and taken the whole level and set it to merge. So now we have the outline of our bowls. I'm going to go ahead and recalculate. Visible here. Hit OK. Let's preview this side real quick. Reset the preview. Preview visible. And there you see our tabs coming in. Then we'll flip it over to the other side. And we'll go ahead and recalculate those. Preview those. And now you can see we have the bowl suspended with all the tabs, which is what we were trying to do. So the next step then is to go ahead and create the area, and we're going to reset preview. The next step is to recreate the area for the screen and the Potpourri Bowl. So for the first one, what we want to do is create a toolpath here by selecting where the screen lip is. And since I only need 0.12 or so of that, all I need to do is go in there and get that lip cleared out. And so I can do one of two ways. I can use a roughing pass, or I can use a clearance bit. Since I'm only going to go down about 0.25 inches, I'll just go ahead and use a clearance bit or a finishing bit to make sure it's a nice clean cut. Furthermore, since I only need this one area cleared out, I'm going to use a profile toolpath. That'll make it the most efficient. So we're going to come over here and I'm going to grab a profile toolpath. Start depth is 0.0. Cut depth, I'm going to make 0.25 inches. I'm going to select. I'm going to use the CIC Workshop downcut finishing bit. Hit select. It's going to be on the inside of the lip. And I'm going to go to a conventional cut, no allowance for offset, no tabs. None of that needs to be done. I'm going to go ahead and do a small ramp, smooth, and it's going to be not 4 inches, it's about half the inch. So I'm going to say 0.5 inches, 0.5 inch ramp. Selector, I'm going to hit the screen lip right here, hit close, and I'm going to title that screen lip, hit calculate, and hit preview on that. Oh, I goofed up for a second. I forgot this right here. Project toolpath onto 3D model. That's critical because we're going onto this model. Hit calculate. The next one that I want to do after that is I want to create the bowl that the potpourri mixture goes into, and I'm going to use 2 toolpaths to do that because I want to make it a nice smooth bowl and I want it to go pretty fast. So I've got 2 vectors here. One is a roughing vector and one is the bowl vector itself. So if we, let me take this off so we don't get any confusion. So we got a roughing vector and then the finishing vector. So I'm going to go ahead and hit close, and this one has to be a pocket toolpath, and we're going to remove both of these. I'm going to select a roughing bit, and I want to go down about 1.5 inches total. So I'm going to select my 1.5 inch golden boy. I'm going to select that there. Then what I'm going to do is start depth at 0, cut depth. I want it as far as I can. So I'm going to take it down 1.45 inches, 1.45 inches. And that leaves me about 0.05. And let me just do 1.4 inches. That leaves me about 0.1 on the bottom. And I'll come out here. I'm going to do the raster again, do that 90 degrees. Sometimes I do 90, sometimes I do 45. I'm going to do a profile pass at the end, which means it's going to go around and one last time after it goes through. I'm going to use conventional. I like to stay with conventional. We will ramp the plunge move 0.5 inches, and there is no pocket allowance. I don't need a pocket allowance because I got this separate vector. Now I could have used the same vector over here and just used a pocket allowance, but that's not how I set this up. We got pocket allowance here, none. And once again, project the toolpath onto the 3D model, selector, associate with, and we're going to go to the roughing pass, roughing inside bowl, hit close. Roughing bowl, hit calculate. And then we're going to set up our last toolpath, which is going to be close, a pocket toolpath. And on this one, we are going to go to 1.4 as the starting depth. That's where we left off with the rougher. And we're going to go 0.1, which takes us down to 1.5 inches. We're going to remove this bit, and I'm going to select a ball nose. Select that. And so it's starting at 1.4. It's going to finish off with 1 pass. That's all it needs to do. And we are going to once again go to raster. We're going to go 90 degrees. We'll do a last pass. We don't need to plunge that. We're only going 0.1 inches. And we're going to finish it off with a pass. And we're going to project that on the toolpath. We're going to go ahead and hit selector. Potpourri Bowl. Close. And you can see it selected that vector right there. And we're going to say bowl finish. Hit calculate. All right, let's preview this now. So the first one we're going to do are these two. So recall we're doing this all while we're sitting on the spoiler board with the bowl up. So the next pass that we want to do then is to go ahead and do the screen lip. We'll preview that. And so that's going 1/4 inch in. Let's twist it around here. And we won't actually be able to test the screen on there, I don't think, until I cut the bowl. So the next one we're going to do is the roughing cut. And we're going to preview that. So now that we have that one done, we're just slightly shy of 1 1/4 inches deep. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do the final finishing cut using the ball nose. And that'll go down and smooth the bottom where the rougher took out most of the material. And smooths everything out, and it actually looks pretty good. All you see is a pixelization there, but otherwise it's looking pretty good. So now that we have the top part of the bowl done, it's time to turn around to the bottom of the bowl and put on the indent. Come over here, let's flip it over. Make sure we got everything set with the reset with the preview. And then we're gonna go, let me preview the bottom real quick. This is currently what the bottom of the bowl looks like, and what we want to do is put a little indent in here to help with rocking of the bowl on uneven, in case there's some undulations or something on the bottom. It's just good practice to put a little indent here. So we're going to do that at this time. Let me close the preview. And then the way we're going to do that is using this vector that we previously installed. Let's do a split so you can see. You may recall I installed this vector before and called it bottom indent or something like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use that area where we made that vector. And I'm just going to do a pocket toolpath down here because that seems to be the easiest way to do this in my experience. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that vector and I'm going to go over here to the pocket toolpath. And I've got 0.1 inches. I'm going to start with a roughing bit and get most of that out of there and then smooth it off with my ball nose. I'm going to change this one to remove it, and I'm going to select a different roughing bit. So instead of the Golden Girl Rough, I'm going to use this Golden Boy XL right here, select. And so that will be my roughing bit. Then I have a smoothing bit. I'm going to use a raster path on that of 90 degrees. And then I don't need any plunge. It's not going deep enough to really worry about a plunge. And then I'm going to have the smoothing of that tapered ball nose at the end, around the outside. The only thing I have to be critical of is that project toolpath onto the 3D model. And select vectors, come over here and use this bottom indent that I put on here, hit close. And then we're going to say bottom indent, hit calculate. And now let's preview that and what it's going to look like here on the bottom. Perfect. So now we have the indent right where we want it. Everything's set up for this bowl. And we can move on to the point where we start saving our toolpaths in the order that we want to cut them. So let me flip this over real quick. Oh, I forgot to add one thing. I've got to add the alignment holes. So after doing the indent, I need to add alignment holes so I can flip this thing over. So let's do that next. So my alignment holes, I know my dowels from previous are 0.43 inch diameter. So I'm going to take this circle here. I'm going to change this to 0.43 inches diameter. I'm going to put one over here, and I'm going to put one over here on the project. Hit close. And then I'm going to go ahead and move these to a layer called alignment holes. And I'm actually going to make the alignment holes my default layer. So now that I have those on the top, I need to turn around and put those same alignment holes on the bottom. So I right click and I say copy to other side. So when I flip this over, you'll see that this alignment hole comes over here and this alignment hole comes over here as far as the project is concerned. So the first alignment holes, if you're familiar with two-sided projects, the first alignment holes I will be drilling in the block of wood before I flip it. And you'll see that when I'm actually cutting the project later in the video. Then when I flip it over, I'll be cutting those in the spoiler board. So with that said, let's go back to the top and make the toolpath for those. So the first thing I want to do is I like to use a profile toolpath for these because I'm using a 1/4 inch bit. 0.5 inches is plenty deep enough. And I'm going to use the Golden Boy roughing upcut. That works fine because I'm drilling into the wood. Upcut's working good there. It's not going to be part of the model. I'm going to go on the inside of the hole. I'm going to change it over to conventional. I like to use conventional. I'm not going to add any tool paths. I am going to add a ramp because I like to have that bit spiral into the actual project. And so I'm going to use a spiral. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit selector and I'm going to do alignment holes. Select associate with toolpath, hit close. Down here I'm going to put alignment. I'm going to hit calculate. And then I've got a preview of those toolpaths. All right, terrific. They're going to be about 0.5 inches down. Not about, they are going to be 0.5 inches down. Now I'm going to flip the project over and I'm going to make the same toolpath on the bottom side. So once again, I'm going to take this profile toolpath, use the same bit, everything's set up inside, add a ramp, spiral. Don't need to project it because it's not actually on the model. It's off here to the side. Hit calculate. Oh, let me do alignment. Align bottom, hit calculate. Of course not, because I didn't select the vectors. Selector, associate with, alignment, close, calculate. Preview. There's our alignment. So now we've got our alignment holes for the top, for the bottom, and we're set to start saving these toolpaths now in the order that we would be cutting them. So let me flip this over to the top again, and let me walk through how I would be cutting these toolpaths, and you will see this in the actual video that follows here. So the first thing I would do is do my roughing pass for my bowl. Then the second thing I would do is my finishing pass for my bowl. And then I would do each of these different paths. Now I may change that up when I'm out there cutting. I may actually take this alignment one and move that to the top. And I may do that first. It just depends on my mood and what I'm using. So we'll see what I do in the actual video when I do this, cutting it at the project. So I could cut this first, or I could cut it last, or somewhere in between. It's not matter. It doesn't really matter. But I will do the bolt roughing, the finish, and then the screen, the routing, and finally the bowl finish. So now let's go to the back. So on the back, the very first thing I will do is I will be doing the alignment pins on the spoiler board. Now let me make a note here. Hit close. I want to bring this up. You'll notice that we have this whole job set on the bottom. And because we have it set on the bottom, if I want to drill these alignment holes in the surface of the spoiler board, I'm going to need to change this temporarily. What I'm going to need to do, otherwise it's going to just float in air because it's going to calculate it from the bottom thinking that the block is 2.55 inches thick. So to make this work, I'm going to have to, before I save this off to the CNC, I'm going to have to first rechange this and set this to the material surface. Hit OK. Then it's going to say, hey, these changed. Do you want me to mess with them? And I'm going to say, no, don't recalculate right now, because I don't want everything recalculated. Then I'm going to recalculate this one here, recalculate just this visible one right here. And then I am going to save this toolpath off to the CNC. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to go back to the machine bed. I'm going to hit OK. And I am going to go ahead and recalculate everything just to make sure everything's working smoothly. And then I can go ahead and save the rest of these toolpaths to the CNC. And I would do it in this order. I would do the bottom roughing, and then I would save this one with the bottom roughing since they're the same bit. So let me show you what I mean. So when I go to save the toolpaths, I'm going to take this one and this one since they're the same bit, and I'm going to save them together. So it'll rough the bowl, and then it'll do the indent rough. And then I'm going to come over here, I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to save it together since they're using the same bit. And that way, they'll go together, and that's what you'll see in the video when I cut this bowl. So that's it. We've gone through the whole cutting philosophy, the tool path, everything the way I'm going to line them up. and it's time to go cut the bowl. Well, that's all there is to the software part of the video. One of the things, I got a list of some key points here I'd like to make sure we review as we wrap up this video. I typically like to do a review summary. And so with this review, here's a couple key points. Oh, by the way, if you like what you've seen, would you please make sure you smash that thumbs up or like button? And also, if you like what you're learning, it's always helpful to me if you will subscribe to the channel and hit that all bell. It helps the channel grow and helps me be motivated to create additional videos. Any comments or suggestions you have for other videos or what you would like to see different with my videos, please put those in the comment section. Any kind of interaction helps the YouTube people decide whether it's worth watching my videos and putting them out to other people. You can help with that. With that said, let's go over the key summary points for this video here, the software portion. The first thing I wanted to do is when you're creating bowls or double-sided projects, the symmetry is important. And to help with that symmetry, it helps if you have an XY 0 in the center part of your project, and it helps by centering all of your designs in the center. So keep an eye on the center part of your project when you're doing this, and then the top and the bottom will match up better. Hope that makes sense. It's likely you'll need to add a flat, zero, or limit plane, whatever you're talking about, to be able to cut that project completely out. So get familiar with that term and recognize that when you're importing two-sided projects with either V-Carve or Aspire, it comes in with a limit plane and you don't have to worry about it other than adjusting it. When you're creating your own components in Aspire, it does not come in with any kind of limit plane, zero plane, or anything else, so you're going to have to create that yourself. So don't be confused if you come into your first 3D component build and there's not a limit plane there if you've been working with STLs. The other thing is, since you're going to cut through the project and want to make it cut completely clear, is you're going to have to get used to using 3D tabs and how to position those in your project. And so learn more about 3D tabs, how you can adjust them up and down, and how to use them effectively. Alignment dowels are critical when you are using a two-sided project. I know there are people that have done lots of two-sided projects without alignment dowels, and there are methods that you can use to do that. I find those a little more likely for error than just using alignment dowels. They're simple, they're straightforward, and you know you're going to get the top and the bottom perfectly aligned by putting these dowels in here, then flipping your material over, and that works out the best. It seems a little intimidating at first, but it's not. If you are intimidated by changing one of your toolpaths from the machine bed, especially on this project, it really doesn't matter. I've just kind of gotten in the habit of doing a lot of stuff off my machine bed with the Z0. I've got a previous video on that, and I'll put a link up in the corner of this video, and I'll put a link down below for you to look at that if you want to know about mastering Z0. That talks about my philosophy on whether I Z off the material surface or whether I Z off the bed. Just if you're intimidated by that, just continue to Z0 off the material surface. It makes it easy. And last but not least, I wanted to point out, and this is something that Ryan Drapella has driven home with me more recently in watching some of his training material, and that is the value of using multiple toolpaths to get nice, clean, and efficient cuts. I used to always just try to use one tool because I didn't want to change tools and so forth, but I found that by incorporating roughing bits and a roughing pass and then finishing bits such as a regular finishing bit or a regular finishing end mill or ball noses makes my project smoother and less sanding. And with that, those are some of the summaries I came up with. I hope you liked what you saw. Again, don't forget to smash the like button if you did. And I hope you're getting out in the shop to make chips. The other video will go through the specifics of how I took the toolpaths that I set up, how I held this material down, how I cut it, each toolpath, and give you a hands-on look at how the software that I did in this video was actually applied. I'll also put a link to that video inside of the video description of this one. With that, go out in the shop, make chips, and have a good day.